接下来的场次，我们非常荣幸邀请到演讲嘉宾 McKinsey and Company 的合伙人 Dr. Denise Lee。Dr. Denise Lee 将为我们带来题为 The AI Inflection: Redefining Work and Decision-Making 的精彩分享。For our next session, it is our great honor to welcome our speaker, Dr. Denise Lee, partner at McKinsey and Company. Dr. Denise Lee will share her insights titled The AI Inflection: Redefining Work and Decision-Making. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Denise Lee.
Good afternoon. Looking around this room is a really humbling experience. Hardware innovators, silicon designers, AI trailblazers. You are forging our AI infrastructure. Now, for the past 50 years, we've operated our businesses on a simplifying assumption. We believe that the core engine of productivity is a unit of human productivity, human labor, with some help from technology. Now, that era is over. We're standing at an inflection point. With the advances in AI, particularly Gen AI and agentic AI, we're seeing a massive change coming. Now, we hire talents, we build teams of people and build hierarchies, and we hand them tools to do their jobs faster and better. That's about to change massively. Now, looking forward, what does this mean for us? Today, we will spend the next 20 minutes or so navigating this new terrain, not just as spectators, but as leaders that will help define and shape this future world. Now, which ones of you in this group like robotics movies? Movies that have man versus machine as a trope. Okay, some in the background, very good. Now, don't get me wrong, right? The tension between man and machine is really great for the movies, but it's actually not super helpful for this discussion. The reality is far more powerful. The future of work isn't about replacing man with machines, it's about partnership. This collaboration is deeply integrated, human talent on one side, intelligent AI agents orchestrating workflows in the middle, and robotics executing in the physical world. We need to stop thinking about our workforce not just as a headcount, but think of it as a hybrid system, a hybrid complex operating system. Another way to think about it is it's really an orchestra. Human creativity and judgment working in sync and the speed with the scale of AI. The organizations that will win this decade will be the ones that are conducting these new orchestras. Now, we talked about this deeply integrated partnership. To master this, we have to demonstrate we understand how it breaks down. So let's deconstruct the work itself. I'm sharing with you some data that we looked at, looking at work hours. We segmented these work hours based on their potential for automation with technology that we have today. Now, combined overall, right, we see 57% of all work hours really primed, right, to be replaced by agents and robots. But the critical number on this slide is actually the 43%. The 43%. This is the hours that require uniquely human capabilities, complex problem solving, emotional intelligence, empathy. So the question really is, how do you quickly shift your human capital, your teams, so they can best move into these 43% and bring their expertise to work with AI? Now, because of this automation potential every job now lives on a evolving spectrum. So on the far left of this chart, you have human-centric roles. Think of nurses, strategic negotiators. Here, human empathy is the core of the value. AI acts as a co-pilot, but the human is flying the plane. In the middle, you have hybrid roles, the people agent robot dynamic. Think of a modern supply chain manager that use AI to predict bottlenecks, while robotics handle the warehouse floor. If we move to the far right, you'll find agent centric and robot centric roles. Standard accounting and precision welding are just some examples. Here, the machines will do the heavy lifting. Humans are elevated to the roles to oversee, handle exceptions, and drive continuous improvement. Now, the takeaway here is quite simple. No role is immune to this change. Our job as leaders is to take stock of the roles in the organization, to see where they are today, and map out where exactly it needs to be tomorrow. Now, looking at this a bit further, we analyzed nearly 7,000 skills across global job postings. And what we found completely defies the doomsday narrative that I shared with you, the man versus the machine. If you look at this, a massive 72% skills are what we called shared skills. And these are skills that take both human and AI to come together to do very well. Now, take invoicing as an example. This is a shared workflow. The AI agent does the heavy repetitive lifting. It ingests the punch list, the purchase orders, extracts the data, and generates the actual invoice. This is the automatable portion. The human expert takes on the contextual work. We handle the exceptions, we resolve the complex vendor disputes, we manage the client relationships. This overarching skill of invoicing doesn't disappear, but it becomes this tight collaborative loop. Now, the takeaway here is that actually it's great news. The vast majority of the skills will need the human still in the loop. So the mandate here is not to replace your workforce, but how do we train them so their domain expertise can be further scaled in partnership with AI? Let's ground this in some physical reality, right? This is an example of a utility scale solar farm. In the past, technicians need to manually inspect every panel when something breaks down. It is a slow, expensive, and error prone process. Now, in this hybrid model, autonomous drones and robots and sensors would patrol the sites. Edge sensors collect real time efficiency performance data. So when something breaks, right, there's a flag that says, hey, panel D44 is in trouble. Have a look, right? This is where the human expert can then enter the scene and figure out what's the risk, what are the options, and make sure it gets done, right? So the roles of the human here have been changed from data gatherer now to informed decision maker. The skill of maintaining and fixing and problem solving the solar panels has been elevated instead of being replaced. Now, the market is already responding with lightning speed, especially when it comes to skills. The demand for AI fluency, the ability to use and manage AI tools, has skyrocketed. A seven-fold increase in just 2 years. This is not a ripple, it's a tidal wave, and we see it hitting every single industry. Now, look at the change in demand for the specific skills. On the very left, you see skills that are centered around automatable tasks, basic data entry, simple calculations. These things are shrinking, right? These are the massive red bars that you see behind me. But if you look on the right side of the screen, the growth is super impressive. Cloud architecture, data engineering are soaring. Towering above everything else is artificial intelligence and machine learning. I also want to call out, not shortly behind artificial intelligence and machine learning, is people management and process improvement and optimization. The global labor market is speaking clearly. It is really placing a strong premium on the ability to build, scale, and integrate AI. Now, historically, we have kept AI basically with the IT department. Many thought this was a job for the data scientists or the PhDs only, but this is such an outdated paradigm. Now, on this data that you see behind me, the brighter cobalt blue is the STEM roles, and the darker blue here is non STEM. Yes, demand in STEM for AI fluency is growing, but you're seeing a much bigger rise in even the non STEM roles. What does this mean? The AI powered employee is no longer a niche role. It is rapidly becoming the baseline expectation for a high performer in every single business function. So, we've talked about the how, the hybrid partnership, we've talked about the who and the roles that they're in, the entire massive talent shift. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the why. The why is the unprecedented economic value that can be unlocked by integrating AI into the very core of your business. At macroeconomic scale, the numbers are staggering. Our research shows that in the long term, traditional predictive AI represents a value opportunity up to 17.7 trillion globally. But Gen AI fundamentally shifts this frontier even further. It adds 4.4 trillion purely through new use cases. And as a productivity multiplier, it adds another 7.9 trillion on top of that. Adding that all up, the total potential economic impact of AI is between 17 and $26 trillion annually. Now, to put this in context, right, capturing the high end of value is equivalent of adding a second United States to the global economy. This is likely the largest value creating opportunities in our professional lifetimes. Now, if we look at just the United States, let's scope the problem a bit more specifically, right? By 2030, we're looking at nearly $3 trillion in opportunity here. I think what is also interesting here is the split. Yes, Gen AI is bringing a ton of the value, right? 1.4, but also the 1.5 underneath it comes from the traditional workforce AI. Now, the imperative is very clear. What does this mean? This means that you should deploy, right, AI agnostically in terms of how to best solve the valuable problem within your core organization versus taking a technology oriented approach. Now, when we distribute that $3 trillion across sectors and functions, this is the very complicated heat map that we get. So I'll pause here for a second, but let me guide you through this slide. Here, along the y-axis, we have different sectors. Along the x-axis, we have different functions. First, there's a lot of value to be unlocked across the sectors, right? Along the side, right, to the very end, you see the total. For every sector, there's a big dollar sign next to it. But also, there are several sectors that are at the forefront of where the value could be. Professional services, consulting being one of them, is one of these sectors. Now, across the functions, though, right, if you take a functions look, this highly consolidated bar of blue to the left-hand side of this chart is the core operations for every sector. If we look further to the right, where you have different tiles of different shades of blue, this is really where we see pockets of opportunities, right? What does this mean? This means that we should absolutely continue to improve IT, finance, legal, right, with AI. This will drive efficiency. But fundamentally, what will really differentiate a business from another is in its core operations, whether you're successful in transforming that or not. Now, Ultimately, technology will not dictate the outcome. Your choices as leaders will. What does this mean? Preparing your people, your processes, and your organization for this shift is not a task you can delegate. It requires clear, visible, and courageous leadership. Resource allocation is one of these very important decisions you'll have to take as a leader. With a multi-trillion-dollar prize, the risk is a lack of focus. A scattered AI strategy means you'll get very scattered ROI, right? So, what is the framework to take, right? This is a simplifying way of thinking about it. But essentially, what you have here is thinking about two types of impact: business impact or individual productivity, and the scale, incremental or systematic, right? Along the top, incremental and systematic business impact is really where we think there's a lot of value. Quick wins that matter, scaling to selectively redesign core business processes that will really drive the differentiation is where we think you want to delegate and deploy the most resources to. Now, if you look on the bottom, right, you will need to help your individual workers to work more efficiently with new tools, but that's not really the priority. And finally, you don't want to be spending a ton of value, a ton of money to over engineer personal productivity workflows. We want to deploy that capital, top talent to the top half. Let's look at this example of a hardware manufacturing leader. They first started a simple but an incremental win in overtime registration. Managers were essentially spending an hour all the time, right? A day, an hour there to really log all the overtime reports. They deployed a basic AI script to automate it. It only took 4 hours to build. It saved a ton of time and it was a very good experience. As a result, the workforce was very happy with this new change. With that trust, that new open mindedness, and that knowledge that technology can help improve a workflow, the leaders launched a more systematic end to end improvement of handling DQA. The results are really staggering. They were able to deploy 3 squads of about 20 agents each to massively lower the number of people required to getting this done. Before, we had about 800 engineers thinking about and doing this on a day to day basis. Now, less than 100 people are really engaged. Not only that, right? 80% of the processes times are changed and saved. And there's also been improvements in the accuracy of the testing. Now, what do I like about the story? They started with a quick win, the overtime registration. And then with that, they were able to open the minds of the workforce, the different teams, and then they were able to launch into a more systematic change. That is change management, and that is the playbook to go from the left to the right of the 2x2 that I just shared with you. Now, we've talked about the math and the technology. I want to talk a little bit about what happens when you roll out AI. The relationship between your team and a new AI tool is just like any other working relationship. A working relationship breaks down when communications fail. Think about the software that sits unused in your company right now. It usually fails for very specific reasons. Number one, the intent of the tool or the software isn't clear. A new AI tool shows up, no one explains what it's for, right? Is it there to save time? Is it to improve quality? And sometimes you get a little bit of a quiet worry that is it there to replace the human? Number two, boundaries weren't set. We don't tell our people where the AI's job ends and our jobs begin. Do they blindly trust the AI's output, or do they need to verify every single cell? Three, no feedback loop. IT sends out a login link and essentially think, okay, deployment is done, right? This is really challenging because then we have no way of knowing whether it's actually helping people on the front lines and making their days better. To successfully scale AI, you can't just buy software. You have to actively manage it, just like you would onboarding a new team member. You need clear goals, clear rules, and a constant feedback loop for improvement. Now we're crossing into fundamentally new paradigm of management. We're moving away from a legacy human-led model where we have hierarchies and org charts. We're moving to a world where we have work charts and lattices of squads of humans and agents. Now, to survive this, right, we really need to be starting thinking about the workforce, their capabilities, and whether the changes are happening in the right place. What does this mean? There are three questions that I think we should walk away with. At the end of the day, the AI transformation will start with you. And before we close, I'd like to pose these three questions for the leaders in this room. Number one, are you truly reimagining your businesses? Are you just paving the cow's path, using revolutionary technology to do something 5% better, right, than yesterday? Do you have a list of core processes that drive value and differentiation that you're working to improve and transform? How will it be redesigned? Number two, are you leading this as a core business transformation? Or are you just delegating it to the IT team, right? Three, are you building a new cadre of AI orchestrators? And more importantly, are you creating a culture where they have the freedom to experiment and learn? Your answers here will really dictate whether your company sets the pace for this new era or spend the next decade trying to catch up. Now, the theme for Computex this year is AI together. And this reminds me of a quote from Helen Keller. Alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. When she talked about this, she was speaking about the human condition, but I thought these words really captures this moment well. Alone is the human mind, brilliant, profoundly creative, capable of deep empathy, but its bandwidth is highly limited. Alone is also the AI, powerful, extremely scalable, relentless analytical, but it possesses no wisdom, no inherent purpose. Together is this partnership, the fusion of human ingenuity and machine scale. That is our call to action. Let's not leave this week simply with a new list of hardware specs. Let's go back to our businesses as architects of this new partnership. Redesign our core processes to really differentiate, elevate and empower our talents, and lead the cultural transformation required to unlock the greatest value creation opportunity in our generation. Let's build our together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dennis Lee, for the wonderful sharing.